right, everyone. How you doing today? Thanks so much for being here. It is, in fact, snowing a little bit here in New York. But hey, it is December, right? So first of all, thanks everybody for being here on this snowy day. Okay, and we're going to talk about practicing today, or what to practice, or excuse me, what I practice. That was good. I burped on camera. Cool. It's live. What I practice and what I try to practice and how I try to schedule my practicing, which is always sort of the bear, right? I'm thinking of what to do. But first, we have a winner on the throwback pickups, and his name is Joseph Moore, and we're going to be sending out a set of SLE 101s. That's in my Les Paul. He wanted a set of that, so good for him, and a year of TrueFire All Access TV, so that's super awesome. And we've got Phil, as always. Everybody's saying hi to Phil. Hey, Phil, what's up? And Phil taking care of everything on the moderator. So all my courses, as usual, are 20% off through my website. If you enter the link live20, you get 20% off. I said 20% off, right? Okay. And so that's going on. And all my music, my record with Robin Ford and myself, and my earlier record are available on Bandcamp. And what I'm thinking about doing, guys, what do you guys think? All these cool background tracks I've been using, I'm going to throw them up on Bandcamp for a very modest price. So if you guys want to pick them up, we can make that something that helps out the channel, and then I can afford to keep on doing all this. So, okay, cool. Oh, dang, where's Evel Knievel? You guys are right. Hold on, he's sitting here right in front of me. I thought about it. So maybe I can just put him, where can we put him? I'll just put him here for now, because I forgot. There he is. Hopefully you guys can see him now. Okay. All right, so, all right, what to practice, where to practice, how do we practice, and everything like that. So this varies from not day to day. I try to make it consistent because that's the way I feel like I get better. And like everything else in life, I go in and out of doing these things depending on how busy I am. Because I am fortunate to play guitar for a living, but that doesn't mean I get a chance to play guitar a lot for myself or practice a lot because I'm teaching or working or courses, and it's all great, but there's a difference between practicing and playing and in working. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing I do is turn everything off. I mean, in the world we live in, it's terrible. Even my metronome is on my phone, and I'm trying, I don't have it here in front of me because you guys can't hear it. I dug out my old metronome because I would look at my phone and then a text would come. And I would just suddenly be off on this little tangent of looking at stuff. So the first thing I do is turn everything off. You need to do that because there's so many distractions. Turn off your phone and, okay, you get the idea. And have a place where you want to practice, where it's comfortable, right? Where you, not near a TV, not near a distraction, where you can be, if you can, work it out where you're not bothered. I always have my guitars out, like in a stand, because if I don't, then I won't play them. So if you have any barrier to allowing yourself to practice, you won't practice. Well, I won't. And I find most people don't. Like, well, my guitar's in my case, and then my wife doesn't like it laying around the house, so I don't do that, and I don't have it out. Then you'll never end up practicing. So everything's got to be ready to go. You turn on my amp, and then you're just ready to go. Okay, and the great thing about practicing is you can practice with an amp or without an amp. It doesn't really matter, and I suggest actually that you do both for the reasons that I'll cover in a little bit. So the first thing I do is I stretch a little bit. Now, I've had all sorts of hand problems in my life, and I sometimes still do, and I'll talk about those today as well, and ways that I try to keep those things at bay. The first thing, I've had problems with tendinitis and a little bit of carpal tunnel many years ago in my wrist. Well, obviously, that's where you get carpal tunnel. So the things that I do that really help me a lot is I never play with cold hands. My hands are a little cold right now, but I try to keep my hands really warm. I have naturally cold hands, and I find if I start to practice with cold hands, it doesn't work so great. All right, so first thing I do is I just stretch a little bit. I don't force anything, just kind of gently pull my hand back like this, right? And as I've gotten older, I find this is much more and more important to do. And at any age, it's important. So just super gentle stretches like this. I do this just to kind of open the hand up a little bit, and I'll do these kind of things. don't push your hands, right? You don't want to, I'm pushing back and pulling back. You don't want to hyperextend anything because then you can hurt yourself and then that just sucks. So this kind of thing, this helps a lot. The other thing I find my biggest problems, and as I'm teaching all day and I'm playing guitar and I have terrible posture to begin with, so sometimes I find myself really slouching. So what I try to do is this stretch where I do this before I practice, because I find my biggest problems come from my neck, apparently, like pinched nerve kind of stuff that shoots into my finger. And my main problem is sometimes this finger gets a little sluggish and it's a pinched nerve kind of thing. And it's also in the forearm. So there's a few things that are going on. So the thing I find, if I find myself stretching a lot like this before I play, and then move my neck, just kind of loosen things up a bit, I find a big difference in how long I can play and how I risk any kind of injury, which I go in and out of it, guys. Sometimes I get carried away. I was working on some Ingve stuff a few weeks ago, and I paid the price. I just kind of dove into it, hadn't played that stuff in a long time, and I just figured, I'm just going to keep on going with this because I'm having so much fun. And it really hurt. Like I felt a little flare up here because I didn't do all the things that I know I should do. Okay, so that's important to stay on top of feeling stretched out, like this, once again, and having warm hands. Okay, so then the next thing, I think, yes, Evil and I are doing the same stretch, right? Pretty funny. Okay, so the first thing I'll do after that is I'll practice something. I'll play some scales, any scale that you're comfortable with. I try to practice things that I'm actually going to use. I think that's something I learned, when I was younger. I learned, those kind of things like that. I found my take on those things is if I'm not going to do that, then why practice it? Right? I want to practice things that I'm actually going to be kind of using. And that only helped me get better at going, which, I don't really do that much. So what I'm going to do is maybe take a scale. Let's say we're familiar with your pentatonic scales, right? And then I do major scales more so than pentatonic scales. But so I have my metronome, which I'm just getting up here, got a lot of things open. And I'll set it nice and slow. Say we've got 80 beats per minute, right? And I'm just going to play eighth notes. Triplets. Very exciting stuff. 16th. See, so right now I'm a little bit clubbing that. So just slow it down a little bit. Maybe slow down my metronome just a hair. Then I'll go to the next position, or maybe I'll just go up and down one position. So, eighth notes through the 5 positions. Right? And what I try to do too, let's talk about these things. Right, very exciting, I know. Okay, now, as I'm practicing that, which is just, running the scales, which is nothing you're not assuming. I'm assuming you know that this is something you should be doing. So one thing that I find really that made the difference and made it much more worthwhile is how I look at it as meditating on how I'm practicing. So I'm going to pay super close attention to the metronome. I always have the metronome a little louder than how I'm playing. I'm just going to turn off the chat. I always get distracted. I look at questions as I'm talking. Okay, so what I do is I put the metronome louder than the guitar, and hopefully it does. I can't tell the mix out there. And that way it keeps me focused in on the time of the metronome. If not, if you're letting the metronome, if you're louder than the metronome, you're going to pull your time or push your time any way that you kind of want to. So to me, the metronome is this loud thing that's going on like this in my ear, or it's just louder than the guitar. Okay, and the other thing I think about is I really look at my hands. Like I concentrate on what my pick looks like, because most of the problems we have when we're trying to play fast is, well, we haven't put in the work, which is the main thing, is but we haven't just gotten the left and right hand to be synchronized. And it's really important. So what I do is I think about it really hard and just kind of take it in. If there's been studies, I kind of find this stuff cool and to think about that. If I just feel it in my body, how it feels when I play it, if you know what I'm saying. So here, any golf swing, same kind of thing. Okay, so, or so I'm told. Right, so I'm looking at my hand to make sure the motion is nice and economical. Now look at my left hand, right? Which is probably the easier of the two. And I'm just thinking about the two. Now this is all alternate picking. And working that first. Now in my pentatonic lockdown course, or pentatonic deep dive course, I could talk about a similar kind of thing. But one thing I want to just address with you with the fingerings, since we're talking about pentatonic scale. We have this pentatonic scale in many guys, and as I had learned it, every fret gets a finger, this sort of Berklee College of Music way, where I came from, where I'm going to be, everything covers a 4-fret span. So if I go up my scale, I'm going to be doing 2-4, 2-4. And I practiced the heck out of that for many years. I'm glad I did, but I think for me that turned out to be not something that was really important in the way I play. I went 1 and 3 because that's what everybody does. When I started seeing guys like Pat Metheny do it, where I would think, I have to have this amazing finger independence, which you do to a certain extent, but your pinky's just kind of the weakest finger of all this stuff. So I don't get too worried about those things, anymore, because as I got older, I'm like, who cares? It's just as long as I can make what I'm going for. So, right? A little fast for me right now. Then, so same thing here. Like I might change this up. Find a finger that works for you and you find to be most comfortable and practice that. Because you will probably discover, and this is what screws us all up, is the inconsistencies in our playing. And what I mean by that is if I'm practicing it slowly, I might finger it with 2 and 4, but I'm playing it fast, I play with 1 and 3. You want to get rid of those things, and you'll see a big difference in your playing, because what you're practicing slow should be the same thing as you're playing quickly, right? So, perfect example here, if I do slow, that's no problem, 2-4, 2-4, right? But I go through 1-3, 1-3. That's easier to me than, that's tricky, especially when I'm trying to put the speed on. This 4-1, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2. Anything with the pinky is just kind of way weaker. So I'm going to just use the most logical thing that will allow me to play it quickly. And what I'm getting at is not to play fast, but to play fluidly. So practice it the same way slowly as you do quickly. That's really important, because I didn't do that for a long time, and I wondered why I kept on screwing up when I was trying to play faster, because I didn't lay down the groundwork. Because we're talking about muscle memory and synapses and all those sorts of things. So the way you practice it is the way you want to play it. Okay. So as I go through the scales, I do this helix method, which I talk about in the pentatonic deep dive, where I'm going to go up one fingering down the other. So I'm just going to put on your metronome for a second again. Your metronome, my metronome. I'm at 80, so. Right, up one, down the other. Right, and I can keep on doing that. That's really good, because I'm doing it for a longer period of time, and I'm just starting to go through the scale, so you push the exercise a little harder. All right, now, the most important thing I could say when you practice anything is I'm always trying to be musical. Always, always, always. So when I'm playing a scale, hopefully it's not like I'm yelling with my guitar or just stomping all over everything. I want everything to have a nice flow to it. So it's good eighth notes. 1. Right in the middle dynamic range of the guitar. Right? And then to start to get some more control, I can accentuate my downbeats. I'm overdoing it, but so in doing this, you're starting to hear that downbeat, and when I'm starting to play actual music with the scale, I'm starting to hear those downbeats, and I have the control over the instrument. As opposed to, that's cool, but it's cooler, right? Because I'm feeling that pulse. So that's one thing I'll do when I'm practicing scales. Now practice them nice and slowly. So like I will still practice pentatonic scales because you can't have any hubris with the guitar. You guys have probably figured this out by now. You go up a scale, and then when you go back down, you can't play it. Like you're ripping through it ascending, and you try descending, and you're like, oh. So there's no guarantee. The only thing you're gonna probably be good at is the thing you practiced, which is, I think, kind of like that with everything. I mean, but they all carry over into other parts you're playing. So we're gonna go through that way. Now, if I do the same thing with the major scale, let's just say I'm going to take a G major scale, 3 note per string, which are nice to practice. Now let's play that fingering. Now what I think about when I'm doing that is also, once again, being musical. And if I, just to backtrack one here, if I don't know the scale fingering, if you're not 100% on the scale fingering, don't use the metronome yet. First things first is you want to memorize the fingering. Because if you don't have the fingering, you're just going to keep on screwing up with the metronome. The point of the metronome is it gives you some pressure, keeps you in time. And you'll know really quickly if your chops are together or not if you're trying to play with a metronome and it starts falling apart. So, okay. All right, so same thing, they're going to accentuate those beats. 2, 3, and Oop. 3 note per string. So I always want to hear, play with the metronome, and I always want to lock in with the metronome as best as I can and think about being musical all the time. That's the really most important thing. My earlier none of my teachers, I got to be honest, ever said that to me. Like, yeah, that's cool, you're playing the scale, but you're not really playing any music. So I try to look at everything as music. How can I play the scale as best sounding as possible? That's really cool to do that. Now the other thing I highly recommend, and I didn't expect to do this, let me just find this track. So as I say in that course too, the lockdown, I'm going to keep on saying lockdown, deep dive. I say lockdown, the pentatonic lockdown, because it came out of this doing these things here. All right, so I'm just going to like basically Stairway to Heaven. A minor, right? It's going to play the scale over the chord progression. Right? So if I keep on playing, if I play the scale over some sort of context, it sounds really good because then you're hearing all those things that you're practicing as music as opposed to something away from the instrument. Because practicing scales can be a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Abstract, right? I'm practicing these scales, but why am I practicing these scales? Well, you're going to use them. So if you're hearing triplets over this, they right? 16th? 16th? Sorry. Yeah, 30 seconds, right? So there, I mean, I can't pick that. So I start working on hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, sometimes, as you might have noticed as I was going through there, I did like, or I can start working in hammer-ons and pull-offs. Another common, for me, myth, or if I want to work on my picking specifically, then I'm going to practice picking that. But also, if I'm playing music like this, I'm going through the scale, and I feel like doing hammer-ons and pull-offs, I'm going to do that because those are really musical, and in the real world, I'm going to end up using those way more than picking every note. Okay, so that's the first thing I would do, is to start working through scales with your metronome. And I do that, that's the first thing that I'll do. And I'll take it nice and slow and start to build up. Now, I also want you to build in breaks in between there. If you're really pushing this stuff, just, don't go nuts. Don't hurt yourself. In guitar, it's definitely not a no pain, no gain situation. If your hands are getting tired and you're feeling kind of stressed, then just stop, because it's not going to do you any good. That kind of, pushing as hard as you can doesn't really work on the instrument. Actually, I think it just messes you up. So, okay, so the other thing I'll do, now let's talk about kind of a lick way. How do you practice a lick? Well, I'll take that same lick and just beat the crap out of it, right? So, right? Like, I'll just play that over and over again over the track because I have it. Because once again, these are muscle memory things, right? That if you haven't practiced it, you're not going to be able to do it. Okay. So then the next thing I'll do is, not try to push myself too hard with that stuff all the time. I'll have that say if you have an hour, 15 minutes of scales is really important. The next thing I'll try to do, even though it's very similar, look at my list here of stuff, is arpeggios are going to be actually more important than scales in my mind. I was having a discussion with my old guitar teacher. He's older school, and most jazz musicians don't think about scales. We get really obsessed with scales, I think, in the 80s and all the shred stuff. Arpeggios are key. I'm not going to go through them all now. I do have a blues arpeggios course that I talk about playing arpeggios and show arpeggio fingering, but I'll do that too. So if I have A7, and playing fast isn't this at all. Because I'm really, as you note about my courses, if you guys know me and been watching, following, I'm always thinking about chord tones. Always, always, always. So if I'm not, I need to know what the chord tones are. So if I'm going to play A7, A, C sharp, E, and G, I'm going to sit there and work through A7. A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp. I also want to think about it as like root 3, 5, flat 7, root 3, 5, flat 7, root 3. So you can hear that sound in your head. So when I start to play a third or a flat 7, I know what those notes are just by playing them. Like if I went, I hear that as the third of the chord. It's not because I have any kind of mystical ability. In fact, I think my ears are kind of shite, to be honest. It took a lot of work So naturally, I was not gifted with good ears in hearing chord tones and things like that. It came from practicing, and it came from practicing it really slowly and making a mental note. And the more you practice this stuff, guys, this is a promise I can make. The more you practice and give these things names, the more you hear them. So suddenly, this happens to me still all the time. Like I'll be listening to a recording, a record, or whatever. Spotify, not Instagram, not Instagram, not Spotify. What am I talking about? I'll be listening to music on whatever platform it is that I'm using, and I'll just hear it. I'll go, oh, that was an arpeggio, A7 arpeggio, and then he did an altered lick, and that was a diminished lick. Just because I played them so many times that I know the sounds of them. Doesn't, like I said, I don't have, you see those videos like Rick Beato with this kid who's got all this perfect pitch. I don't have that. My friend Chris has got that stuff too. Perfect pitch, you can play. We used to joke around as kids, do the same thing. You just play this big cluster, like put all your hands down on a piano, and he'd tell you all the freaking notes because he has ears like that. But as he said to me, he goes, yeah, but it doesn't give me perfect memory, and it doesn't make me more musical. I just know where the notes are. So that was an interesting thing. He's like, it doesn't make me it makes me a better player in many ways, but it doesn't make me a better artist, which I thought was kind of a cool way. And he said, and I don't have perfect memory. Okay, so next thing. Hey, Russ DeFilippis is online. Okay, this is the guy I was talking about, my first guitar teacher after Berkeley. And I'm going to have Russ on because I owe Russ a huge debt for being the guy who helped me put all this stuff together. Came out of Berkeley with just a head full of information, and Russ was the guy who helped me put it together. So this kind of idea about thinking about chord tones came from him, because he used the same kind of thing, like, what's all this scale stuff, blah blah blah, that's for arrangers. And so it's about playing chord tones. And then I started realizing that all my favorite guitar players, all my favorite guitar solos, whether it's something as simple as like a Pink Floyd solo, he's nailing chord tones, or if you're talking about a Charlie Parker solo where he's outlining the chord changes. So the scales to me are to get your technique together, and you need to know them. Super important to be able to do, right? To get that together, to be able to play that. But the main thing that to me is if I'm playing A Mixolydian, I'm thinking in my head, those are the notes that I want to end up resolving to. So, my arpeggios. So the first thing I would say, even though many people would say first thing I would say is to practice your triads. Your 1, 4, 5s. Sounds like you're in church, right? Ooh. So much for me getting those. All right, so your 1, 4, 5 major triads, because I'm always thinking about triads when I'm soloing, and in future things we'll talk about triadic soloing. Some of you hear Larry Carlton do quite a bit, and Robin Ford and everybody else. But so I'm always thinking about the chord tones, so I want to make sure I know them. So practicing triad arpeggios, I found practicing triad arpeggios were cool. For that, for sure. And then practicing my dominant sevenths. And the reason why I went for my dominant sevenths for my major seventh, right? Right? A major seventh. I just was using a dominant seventh more, playing more blues and blues rock. So I opted, and I tell a lot of my students, if you're just getting into this stuff, dig into a dominant seventh arpeggio. And like I said, there's my course there. Over on my website, and I don't mean that as like, yeah, go, I do, yeah. If you want to help me out, buy the course. I think it's a great course, personally, because I run through all this in great detail, and it was one of the biggest leaps in my playing. And as I go through it, I'm going to say like A major, A dominant 7, A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp, E, G, A, right? And then what I'm going to end up doing is if I want to make it A major 7, I just raise my flat 7 to a natural 7. A, C sharp, E, G sharp, A, C sharp, E, G sharp, A. All right? Minor 7, flat 5, diminish. So if I know one and how the scale works, I know how to put it all together over a lot of time. But that's the fun part. The journey's never done, ever, ever, ever. Okay, so if somebody said to me, if somebody said to me, what do you need to practice? Like, you feel like, okay, you know your scales, kinda, you feel like you're kind of confident, you know your pentatonic scales. Arpeggios. Arpeggios, arpeggios, arpeggios. That's super, super important. Okay, and the next thing I would say, if you talk about serious practicing here, I'll play through, and my good friend Corey Congilio this morning on his Instagram posted about what he does playing to the real book, that jazz book, and I will do the same. I'll just take a tune and just kind of try to play through it, or work on something specific that I haven't done, or making some chord changes where I'm pushing myself to do it. There's a great app that you can get on your phone. It's called iReal Pro, and just give you an example. I don't know if you guys can really see that, but there's a chart, right? And then I can press play, and it plays. My microphone, right? Right, so I can play along with these jazz tunes, these jazz standards. And what's fun about that is I can just practice making those chord changes. It's something I just do to get some new ideas in my head. I'll play through the changes, whether it's arpeggios, or I'll play through the chords, because you want to start working in some of those chords, right? Something like autumn leaves, Right, then my jazz playing. So I'm not a jazz guitar player, but in learning these chords and knowing how to navigate these things, I can fake my way through, but I'm increasing my understanding of the instrument. So also when I hear a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which is actually in Mr. Crowley, then, right, there's a minor 7 flat 5 chord. So I heard that. Okay, so arpeggios are really, really big. Really, really big. Okay, so, and how do you play through them? I would say if you know me and you're here because you like what I talk about, it's probably because you like blues, right? So starting to play through your arpeggios with the blues, which is in my course, like I said. Okay, and then finally, well, I can talk about this forever. The last thing I would do is you want to build up repertoire. That is so huge. So if you're a jazz musician, there's like a staple of jazz standards everybody needs to know how to play, and that informs the way you play other stuff. So if you're a blues guitar player, you need to know a lot of blues tunes. And I've told the story before that I've been on blues gigs and pickup gigs with just semi-pro guys, and they'll call a tune and they're always kind of surprised, like, wow, you know all those songs? And I'm like, it's my job. So if they call Checkin' on My Baby, I know that. If they call Stormy Monday, I know that. If they call Key to the Highway, My Babe, Tramp, like all those tunes, I know all of those because that's my job. Just like if you're on a jazz gig, you would need to know all these jazz standards. So working on repertoire is big. If you're playing in rock covers, then learn how to play a bunch of tunes that are are going to get called on the gig. Like it's, I could call nobody's going to say Metallica tunes. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to call a Metallica tune on a gig, usually. So being able to know those things are important. So the stuff that you have to do, you got to put in the work, guys. That's it. I wish I could say something other than that. You just have to put in the work. The guys who are really good put in the work. And anybody who's good at what they do put in a lot of work. But I found the work to be a ton of fun. And the better you get, the better it is. So, okay, cool. So let me just jump to some questions. All right. Oh, play something cool. What am I, your dancing monkey? Screw you. Yeah, I don't have any patience for that stuff. All right. Hold on a second. All right. Okay, so Nikki O'Neill's here. Hey, Nikki, what's up? Thanks for being here, and everybody who's here. Vili, what's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you. Jason Carter, Stan Stamos, Blues Boy Tony, Jason Carter, Mike Anderson, Graham Ross, Tom Annette, everybody. Okay, cool. Jumping down, everybody's here. I want to get to some questions. So not to get sidetracked by a troll, but one thing I want to point out is the reason why I can do cool stuff is because I've done this. Anybody who says that can't do it. Okay. Here we go. One thing I do want to talk about, a bunch of you guys have contacted me about guitar lessons, and I've gotten back to some of you, not some. I really apologize. I'm working my butt off to get a course out with Brett Papa, and a bunch of things kind of came together at once, and I got overwhelmed. So I will get to you, and I super appreciate anybody kind of reaching out for lessons. It means a great deal to me, and I will get to you. Please don't be offended. It's just a bunch of things happened at once. You know, in the past few weeks have been really, really nuts. And it's great, but I wasn't quite expecting to to get that influx. So thank you, and I will get to you. I promise. Okay. What metronome do you want to get? Yeah, any kind of, the apps are cool. The only reason I was saying about an app on your phone was it distracts me, because unless I turn off all the notifications or something like that, I'll start looking at my phone. You know, if somebody texts me, and then I'm like, oh crap, I got to return that phone call. So if I turn that off, so I don't have it here on the table, just, you know, one of those Boss metronomes that can do different subdivisions of beats and things like that, that would be cool. Okay. All right. When you're practicing scales, this is from Tom, when you're practicing scales, you sometimes break out of the scale and just play a musical thing. Yeah, okay, the other thing I'll practice, we were talking about practicing, I'll just practice playing, right? Like I'll put on a track like I played earlier, and I'll just play over it in solo, you know, and then work on ideas and just see what happens. But sure, absolutely. Or if I'm working my arpeggios, I'll play a track, and then I'll just try to use those arpeggios. Now, that's practice versus playing, right? So sometimes I'll just kind of forget it, and I'll just start playing. And if I hit a cool note that I didn't expect to play, then I'll maybe stop and pause and say, okay, what was that? You know what I mean? So, okay, great. Jason Lachlan texted me, bored. I love my friends. Okay. All right. I'll go down to the questions here. When I practice arpeggios, do I stick to the chord tones or the? I'll stick to what I'm trying to practice. I'm going to try to stick to playing root 3, 5, and 7 right off the bat. Right, then I'll start adding in 9s, 11s, and 13s. I'll get more into that when I don't think about so much 9s, 11s, and 13s. I just think about upper structure triads on top of that, which we can talk about another time. But I'll definitely practice the root 3, 5s, and the 7s. Right, that kind of thing. Okay. What course would you recommend to start on arpeggios? I would actually really say my blues arpeggios course. Honestly, take you through it really slowly. You've got a printout of all the arpeggios. I take you through a bunch of different levels of difficulty to go through it, but I show you exactly how I practice it. And I think I'm really happy I made that course, because I feel really happy to point people in that direction. Okay. Okay. Do you have any tips for playing laid back? Yeah, that's Peter. That's a great question. Yeah, I will, if I have that track or a metronome going. So laid back is a tough thing, but if I have the metronome, it's a tough thing to talk about personally. So, you know. As opposed to, like, on top of that beat, One thing that helps me kind of play a little bit laid back is if I accentuate those downbeats. Right? And I just kind of think about playing, leaning back, and do a lot of listening too. That carries it through. Hey guys, I'm sorry I lost my temper. Sometimes I gotta say, I gotta be honest with everybody. Most everybody's been really awesome, but when somebody you're talking about guitar, and some people can just be really obnoxious, and I have to learn to let it go. I just don't understand the mentality at all as a human being. I don't understand why anybody would bother with that kind of thing. So I'm sorry if I lost my temper a little bit. It's just been, I appreciate the growth of the channel, and then sometimes you're like, why would somebody say this? This is just like, oh my God, you know. So sorry about that. All right. Well, layback is definitely listening. A lot of active listening, like just in learning a lick or two, you know. So transcribing is huge too, but so there's so many things to work on. So I was just giving you I've got an hour to practice. What can I practice that's actually going to propel me forward? Transcribing is really important in there, learning other people's tunes. That's super important. That's part of that, building up repertoire and learning how to play. And then if you're learning other people's solos, that's really important as well. As long as you understand where the thing is coming from, right? You want to make sure you know where it's built up from. Like if you're playing a lick that's got a natural third, like, oh, and that's that natural third from that arpeggio, so that's important. Okay. You find a specific chord or practice boring. Should we stick with it or focus in or find something you enjoy doing? Well, you know, there's certain things that are really, some things you guys got to just play through. The way I look at it is if you're really bored and you're practicing, then you're not doing it right. Does that make sense? So let's say if you're going through something like going through like our practicing a major seventh arpeggio. I like to go through that so I can hear that, that sound, and I try to make it musical. So I don't find anything really boring to practice anymore. That's my answer, I think. It's like if you're bored by something, try to find something in it that you're missing, because it's all music. And practicing scales should be musical. It shouldn't just be running through like mindless fingerings, because we're not talking about soloing. We're talking about, bringing out your musicality through a good sounding note, like violinists and pianists. Everybody's trying to get these, these good sounding notes, and it's really important. It's part of who makes everybody the way they sound, the way they do. When I hear, some of my favorite players, anybody who's really good has thought about their tone, and their tone comes from when they're practicing the things, they're always being conscious about it. Okay. All right, thanks, guys. Sorry about the the troll thing. I know. I just don't understand. Okay. In your arpeggio course, you also suggest which fingers to... Yes. Sam Stamos, and thank you. In the arpeggio course, I give out fingerings. I'm not trying to be sneaky about it. That's just a whole hour worth. Like the intro to the course is like a half hour long on how to put this all together. I give out I talk about fingerings. I think about what are the most practical fingerings for a guitar player. I think a little bit earlier was that when I discovered that the third finger sometimes is just a better choice than the pinky for being able to play. And it was watching guys like Pat Metheny play and going, he's not really using his pinky that much. Or Eddie. Eddie didn't use his pinky that much until he was stretching, Okay. Curious of other rhythmic challenges with scale practice besides eighth note, sixth, and triplets, like playing them straight against a shuffle. I'm just trying to improve your... That's Nikki. That's a great question, Nikki. Yeah, for sure. I'll practice different time feels over the top. Yeah, so I might try playing straight over a shuffle feel, or really working on my shuffle. And also just try to work on accentuating different beats, right? So if I'm just like, if I'm playing A7. So when it kind of keep on going on there, I was always thinking, right? I might have a drummer going that, or like a metronome. Click, click, click. So all I was thinking there is I was playing my arpeggios. That was primarily all arpeggios with some scale stuff in between. But I'll just think about, I let my ears carry me a lot. And I'm not, my favorite quote from Robin is, not afraid to be a fool. And sometimes I'm just practicing. I'm just going to go for it. And if I didn't make it, whatever. And if I do make it, you develop this really cool ability to being able to recover, right? So if I decided to throw in some odd rhythm that I was feeling, I hopefully know where that downbeat is and figure out a way to recover from do it. Okay. Was that helpful, Nikki? Okay. Okay, you live in Brooklyn. Okay, hold on. You live in Brooklyn. Can you play plugged in? I gave up playing plugged in. I'm in the UK. And yeah, I am fortunate enough to be in a situation where I can play, where I am in Brooklyn. I'm not in I can make some noise. I mean, excuse me, within reason. I don't crank my amps, but really, I mean, I'm playing through my 2-rock right now, but I'm coming through the aux. It's like kind of a TV volume, and I kind of usually keep it fairly low volume anyway, because I just can't. My ears, I got enough ringing in those ears that I try not to torture myself too much. And, yeah, I living in Brooklyn, but there's lots of ways you can go around it. Like plugins are really great. There's all sorts of nice ones that you can have it at sort of a television volume. But I practice all the time without an amp. One thing that's important, though, if you're going to play with a lot of distortion, you do need to practice that with distortion, because you have to learn how to mute and all those sort of things like that. Okay. How do you go about practicing rhythm? Now, that's a great question, too. I'll just choose a tune. So if we're talking about a shuffle, I'll just work on accentuating certain beats. We talked about in some of the lockdowns previous about just hitting, downbeats, hitting your upbeats, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 2 and 4, 4. Right, so there's all that kind of stuff. So I'll specifically work on certain ideas. A lot of times that's really from listening to other guys play. If you're talking about blues rhythm, the biggest influence on me is Robin Ford, for sure. So, so much so that I have to be careful, sometimes playing with him, that I don't try to sound like a guy who's trying to sound like him. So, okay. Sorry, I'm going to go down to the bottom here. Got the cracks in rhythm. Oh, good, Nikki. I'm glad you and Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed the demonstration. Thanks. My wife calls practicing plinky plinky. That's nice. No, well, I practice it unplugged all the time, and it's good because then you get to know the guitar too, you know? Because, you know, when you're playing amplified, it's just an extension of what you sound like on the actual instrument. So I play unplugged as much as I play plugged in, all the time. I mean, you can't really hear it, but, you know, I find I really get to know. Actually, another cool thing is playing unplugged, you get to know your guitar, which is also another important thing. You want to get to know your gear, and you want to get to know your guitar. So, you know, each one's going to have a little bit of a thing to it, so you get to know your guitar, especially when you're practicing unplugged. Okay. I hope this helped a lot. Ring in the ears, pinch nervous shoulder, carpal tunnel tendonitis. Man, I got to take you out to spa, baby. Let me put it this way. Okay, so that's Tom. That's very funny, man. The tinnitus, bit hereditary. You know, my grandmother had it, and she wasn't playing Marshalls. So it happened in a gig specifically. I always wear earplugs, and there was this one gig I couldn't really wear them because the drummer was drunk, and it was a low ceiling, and I remember it specifically, and I was the band leader. And after that, it never really kind of went away. So, yeah, that was unfortunate. So earplugs all the time. I don't play really loud because it's just, I can't anymore. And if I do play loud, especially, you know, the thing is, you know, I can't play loud here because you're sitting right in front of it, and that's horrible. If there's some distance between like a rehearsal or a real gig, you can get away from your amp, and then it's much more manageable with the volume. And then I always wear earplugs. And then the push, I have the molded ones. I got to get a new pair because they don't fit right anymore because the plastic wears or dries and shrinks a bit. But, you know, the push-in ones, like the flanged ones, those are cool because then you can adjust how far in and out you need them to be for your gig. Because sometimes the push-in ones, like if you don't have the right filters and you got like too heavy a filter and they're the fitted ones, you're kind of screwed. If it's the gig you turn out, it's like, oh, the gig's not nearly as loud, and you've got these things in and you're like, ugh, you know. So I like the ones that you can push in, the high quality ones that I can kind of like decide how deep they go in. Do I have a beginner course? You love my videos. Thank you very much, Yusuf. I really appreciate it. I don't teach beginners just because there are people who are much more adept at that. I used to. I don't think I excel at teaching beginners. You know, if you want to just study with, I don't know if Nikki teaches beginners, and Nikki's online. I highly recommend Nikki. She has a TrueFire classroom. Go to TrueFire or Nikki's website. I would highly recommend her if you're just starting out. I think you teach beginners, right, Nikki? And there's other guys like Justin Guitar Online has a whole beginner method. I don't teach beginners anymore. Many years of doing that. Many years. My favorite when I was teaching guitar stores when I was like out of college, I had this one kid. Was that was the best. He would never practice, so he was a little jerk. I said to him, "Hey, do you want to play guitar?" And he goes, "Well, I don't want to play piano." And I was like, all right. I see where we're at here. Okay. Would I recommend practicing certain licks? Yeah, for sure. In some of my my beginning blues rock guitar course, there's like what I call them the foundational licks. A lot of those kind of repeated licks, those things you kind of hear like Jimmy Page play. You know, I say Jimmy Page, freaking Jimmy Page. Like those kind of those kind of licks like that. Those really foundational ones. Those are super important to practice. Okay. Yep. Jason Laughlin Speakeasy channel. Okay, Jason Laughlin as well, of course. There's lots of people, and I would take a look. Whoever gets you, whoever floats your boat in terms of what it is. Okay. Okay, I was like, this is Neil, it's a good question. I could never get comfortable not looking at the neck when I play. Any advice on trying to consciously practice without maintaining accuracy? Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you at sometimes. On gigs, I see videos back, and I'm like, God, but can I stop looking at the fingerboard? You should know this already. And I look at, someone like, Robin. He's just not looking at the neck at all. So I think it's experience and just being conscientious of it, or just practicing and not looking. Like I'll start going when I start playing, and I'm like, I don't need to look at the fingerboard. Just start practicing a certain idea without not looking at it. And don't worry about it if you screw up. Okay. Am I planning opening a TrueFire channel? I am not going to be doing a channel. See, TrueFire, I'm putting one together at some point soon. There's a lot of things going on. A bunch of courses that I have coming out. One that I am in the middle of filming is Brett Papa that I'm super excited about. And then, well, I never say never with the TrueFire channel. It just a few things I wanted that I love TrueFire. It doesn't mean anything against them. It's not a TrueFire channel. Look for something on my own. And of course, pretty soon, hopefully before Christmas, with Brett Papa. And what I'm going to do with Brett is it's sort of like a heroes of mine. I talk about some of the guys I talk about here: Clapton, Beck, Page, and Gilmore, and things that I've picked up from them that can help you sort of grab onto that more. Not so much here's how to sound like Jimmy Page, or because that's a lot of work, and why would you want to sound like somebody else? But those things that were really useful to me or beneficial to me, if I want to channel some of that. So these are my favorite guys, and that should be coming out hopefully soon. I'm working my butt off. That's why some of you have not heard from me. Okay. Tips on bending while vibratoing. Let's take that the last question. If you check back through the channel here, there is some stuff on bending and vibrato. So I would definitely look into that. The main thing is just getting the thumb behind over the top. And like you're pushing downwards, like getting this real anchored position over the thumb of the top of the neck. Right? Play your first note, and then go to the next note that you want to bend to. And just make sure you're in tune. And then vibrato. Right? Also watch YouTube, man. Find out some of your favorite players and just look at their hands. It's super important. Oh, Jason Carter, ask Corey. Udemy has a great new teaching platform. Yeah, man. Corey just put out a beginning blues guitar, and he's got some stuff out with Brett Pop as well. So I highly recommend Corey. Good friend of mine. And so I don't have any super beginning courses. All right, 3 more to go. 3 more. Yes, I hit 100 likes. Thank you. Okay. Well, I want to say once again, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone who chimed in. Thanks for all the people who are hitting the tip jar. I appreciate that. All the people who purchased the courses. You guys are the best. And don't forget, all my courses are 20% off if you go through my website, JeffMcErlain.com. You have all my stuff over at Bandcamp if you want to check out my music. 2 records, one called I'm Tired, the other one's called Now. And yeah. All right, so thanks, everyone. I will see you next week, and we get ready for the holidays. And thanks, everyone. And yes, the people who have not heard from me about guitar lessons, you will hear from me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.